Okay, thank you for joining us for this first panel. The title of our panel is What is the Landscape of Teaching-Oriented Careers? So we're here to welcome grad students at all levels, postdoc and industry researchers considering a career change. And one audience we didn't anticipate is faculty who want to better advise their students about career paths. So I'm very happy to have our panel here representing a range of institutions and positions. We'll have the panelists introduce themselves in a moment, but I will say briefly, I'm very pleased that we have America Chambers from the University of Puget Sound, Jeffrey Herman from UIUC, Drew Hilton from Duke, and we should have Thomas Reichherzer joining us within the next few minutes. It sounds like something came up at the last minute and he's running a little late. But we'll go ahead and begin with the panelists that we have. If we could stop screen sharing, please, so that we can see the panelists better. Thank you. I'll go ahead and ask this first group of questions for introductions. So if each of you would please tell us a little bit about your institution, your job title, and whether you have security of employment. Tell us a little bit about the responsibilities entailed by your job title, not just teaching load, but also any expectations for advising research and service. And if you'd also tell us, do you have a PhD and is a PhD required to teach at your institution? And America, I'll ask you to begin.
Yes. Well, welcome. Hello. My name's America Chambers, and I teach at the University of Puget Sound. We're located in the Pacific Northwest, so kind of the West Coast, I guess the Northwest, just south of Seattle. I guess my institution is a little smaller, so we have about 2,000, a little less than 2,000 students, and that's mostly undergraduate students. So despite being called a university, we're really kind of a liberal arts, primarily undergraduate institution. We do offer 3 masters. So we have masters in education, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. But for computer science, it's just an undergraduate department. I'm an associate professor of computer science. I've been teaching this is my 11th year teaching. In terms of my job responsibilities, so I obviously teaching is our top focus at my institution. And so we teach 3 classes or kind of 3 units a semester. However, in computer science, we also teach labs. And so for me, it kind of looks like 2 classes in a lab, 1 semester, and then 3 classes in a lab the next semester. So I teach, my classes are quite small. So they're about somewhere between 15 to 40 students. And then in addition to teaching, responsibilities include research, which rarely happens during the semester. So I spend my summer doing that. And then service. And so we serve on departmental committees. So for example, I have organized all of our tutors and TAs. So that's one thing that I've taken over for our department. So departmental level service all the way up to university level service. So this semester I'm on a very interesting committee that basically oversees the constitution of our university. So it's called the Faculty Code. It's a legally binding document, and I'm on the committee that oversees it. And we issue interpretations just as one would of the Constitution, and it's been a very unique experience. So, okay, so that's my job title. I do have job security, so I am tenured. I'm a tenured professor. And then at my institution, in order to be in a tenure track, you do need a PhD. However, we do have non-tenure track positions. We have visitors, we have adjuncts. We used to have kind of tenured teaching faculty that may be coming back. And for those positions, you don't need a PhD. A master's is sufficient. Okay, Janet, did I forget anything? I think
you hit everything. Thank you very much, America.
Yeah.
If any, to the audience, if any questions come up as you're listening to the panelists, go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A tool, and we'll have some time for Q&A later. Let me ask Jeffrey to speak next.
Hi, making sure I'm unmuted. I'm Jeffrey Herman. I'm a teaching associate professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Um, I might work backwards. So I do have a PhD. A PhD is required at my institution for our teaching professor track, but we do have an instructor and a lecturer track that do not require a PhD. And so those are, I forget this, there's distinctions between the two, but yeah, there are tracks that you could be teaching faculty without a PhD at my institution. I do know we had some candidates who were just masters only in the past years. So, um, so my job title is teaching associate professor. So we have a track, like I said, it's just like where it's just kind of you have the assistant, associate, full professor titles, but that is professor. But you could also potentially have like an instructor or lecturer title if you wanted to focus on teaching. There's lots of other titles you could possibly have as well. We do have a degree of security of employment. So right now I'm on what we call a 5-year rolling contract. So every year I get a new contract for 5 years, which is really nice. So if they are going to fire me, I have a little bit of a heads up. Um, and so like that's the way we talk about it at my institution. And then like what does my job entail? Is so there is a bit of a range of what the teaching faculty positions in my department look like. The most standard version is that our faculty would have 70% of their time be spent on teaching, 20% of their time being spent on scholarship of some variety that can include research, doesn't have to be research, and 10% of their time being spent on service. So that's things like serving on committees or other stuff. But we do tweak that dial a little bit depending on what the faculty want to be doing. So I'm a little more research active than most of the teaching faculty. So I forget if it's 60 or 55, and then a different number for the other. So I do a little bit less teaching than some of my peers, but I do more research as well. So I personally do research. Several of my colleagues don't do any research and are very happy doing that in the same job title in the same position. So I guess I probably should start with a little bit more about our institution. So University of Illinois is a large land grant institution, so it's public serving. We do one of our major missions is to serve the state of Illinois and to help the state of Illinois grow. We are partially funded by the state and then also rely on lots of other dollars. I'm in a CS department that has we have classes of 1,000 plus students at times. A lot of our classes, we have about 400 CS majors though each year. So, or no, per semester. So it's 800. Yeah, so pretty decently large, and most of our teaching faculty, focus on teaching large classes as part of our jobs. I think that's everything.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Let's have Drew next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Drew Hilton. I'm a professor of the practice at Duke University. I'm actually in the electrical and computer engineering department, but I'm really a computer scientist. My PhD is in computer science. I teach software classes. We have a lot of that in our CE department. So Duke is a pretty major private university. We have undergrads, master's, PhD students. I teach a 2-2 load. My position is regular rank, so there's assistant, associate, and full. I'm on a 5-year contract. It's not the rolling kind that Jeffrey just described. We get reappointed with 1 year, like we get our reappointment decision with 1 year before our contract ends. But it would be very rare for somebody to not get reappointed. Let's see. So I do a 2-2 load. I do a lot of service. I'm actually on a 2-1 load right now because I have a teaching release from my role as Director of Innovation and Computing Education in the Dean's Office. Prior to that, I directed our master's programs for several years. I serve on departmental committees. I've served on engineering school level committees. I've served on a couple university level committees. I do a lot of service. We don't really have the formalized percentages that Jeffrey mentioned. I joke that I do 80% teaching, 40% service, and 20% other scholarship. And it's only kind of a joke. But I do, our role is flexible in what we do beyond teaching and service. So research is an option. It can be educational or technical research. Um, some of my colleagues do outreach. One of them runs like a high school robotics team. It can be like I wrote a textbook many years ago. Um, it can be entrepreneurship. So we have like a big flexibility of just you're supposed to go do something that's scholarly interesting beyond your teaching and your service. And so I've done technical research. I had 2 PhD students who have graduated. They published in ISCA HPCA Micro on the computer architecture side. I do a little bit of educational research once in a while. As I mentioned, I wrote a textbook. I have a bunch of Coursera courses. So I'm kind of all over the place with my scholarly interests. I feel like there's one more question I'm supposed to answer, Janet. Did I cover everything?
Do you have a PhD, and is that required at your
Oh,
institution?
yes. I have a PhD in computer science. A PhD is required for regular rank faculty positions, which are the tenure track, the professors of the practice, and the research professors. We have a variety of other titles that can be had with just a master's. Um, Instructor, executive in residence, adjuncts, I don't know all of them. But most people, if they're in like kind of the regular rank faculty are like the most core faculty who get to vote on things and stuff like that. That has to have a PhD.
Thank you, Drew. All right, so I see there's a question in the chat, but let's hold that for a little bit and continue working through some of the prepared questions, and let's see what more questions come up. As a reminder to the attendees, if you've got questions, please go ahead and type them in the Q&A tool. We do have some time reserved for Q&A. So let me go ahead and ask, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Since some of you mentioned what you teach, let me ask you to talk about what you teach if you haven't said that already. And also, how much say do you have in your department about what you get to teach or have to teach? Who'd like to jump in first?
I can go.
Thanks, America.
What do I teach? So in my department, every faculty member kind of teaches through the entire major. So I teach Intro to Computer Science, which is both the intro course for our major, but also is a core distribution course, meaning if a non-major takes the course, they get credit and they fulfill their math requirement to graduate. So I teach intro, which gets potential majors and people who are just taking a one-off course. I teach 200 level courses. So I teach software engineering, which is kind of software engineering and web development. And then my research is in natural language processing. So I teach algorithms, which is a course at the 300 level for us. And then I teach artificial intelligence and natural language processing. And then we have a 400 level capstone course, and every professor rotates through that. So I teach that periodically as well. How much say do I have in terms of what I teach? I have complete say, I guess, in what I teach. I'm in a small enough department that we can all just sit down together and work out a schedule. And we all have kind of distinct research areas, which then working backwards means we have kind of distinct courses that we teach. So one of my colleagues does research in distributed systems and databases. So he kind of takes that part of the major courses. I think also because I'm in a small department, really the only thing that might introduce a little bit of tension is just trying to be polite to people. Right? You might realize that a colleague due to scheduling has kind of a really tough semester. And so we try to shift things around, shift labs around so that everyone, has kind of an equal weight in terms of what they're carrying. And so, it's never the case that I'm assigned anything, and it's never the case that I'm forced or have to teach something. I'm in a small enough department that we all just talk and kind of work it out. And it's quite cordial. So, yeah.
Thank you, America. Jeff or Drew, would you like to jump in on this one?
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't mention I'm in a similar situation to Drew, where my service load has gone dramatically up. So this past semester, I'm actually at like 70% service and 0% teaching and 20% research or something like that, as I took on an administrative role. So right now I'm not teaching anything, which is a little weird, very weird for me. I can't think of the last time I didn't teach. But normally I teach our computer architecture class as kind of my main class that I teach. And then occasionally I will teach graduate level education research classes in my department. Sorry, my dog just decided to start barking right then. Okay. So yeah, so a lot of what I teach is tied to the research that I do. So I do computers and education research. So I study how students learn, and and particularly how do we do like pedagogy and stuff like that. So I use one of the things that I do that's part of our the way that we make teaching decisions is that I like to use my class as my research lab. And so I've worked out a pretty clear like agreement with my department that's like, please let me teach this class as many times as I can, because I am doing stuff to try to like I'm running experiments, and if you move me around, that makes it hard to do my research. And so my department's been very, very supportive of that. And so that feeds into kind of largely kind of how we do teaching assignments is that we have a really big department because of the number of students. We have about 100 faculty, and it's a lot of moving parts. And so generally speaking, kind of every year we sit down by kind of either like we call either research area, or like we also have like an instructional area for faculty who are in charge, like who focus primarily on the intro level courses. And what we kind of do is have a distributed model where every area kind of suggests, okay, here's what we think would be a reasonable allocation of our people to the courses that like we generally would need to cover. So like the computers and education area covers the graduate level courses for our research area, plus a few of our like quote research lab courses. And so we suggest who should be teaching those courses just to support people's research agendas and whatnot. And then other areas do that. And then we all send this up to the associate head, who then kind of says like, oh, wait, this won't work for these reasons. So they keep track of the bigger meta picture, like, oh, actually, we really need this course taught. Like, I know no one wants to teach that course, but like, or like, if there's just cross areas communication that needs to happen, they help cover that. And so the ultimate decision rests with the associate head, with lots of input from the areas. I think, did I cover the majority of that question?
I think you did. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thomas just joined us. I'll have him introduce himself after Drew responds to this question. So Drew, you mentioned you teach software. What does that entail? And do you have more to add about how teaching assignments are made?
Yeah, Chris, you said that my mic wasn't good. Is it good
You sound
now?
much better now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this thing, like, I have to turn it the right way and it's hard to tell which way is right. So sorry about that during my introductions. So what do I teach? Over the span of my time at Duke, I have taught a lot of different classes. Right now, when I'm not on teaching release, my sort of normal rotation is in the fall. I teach 2 sections of the very intensive master's intro programming course. So we have a lot of students who want to come in and be software engineers, and they need a very intensive intro to programming. That's the course I wrote my textbook for. It's been kind of my flagship course over my entire time at Duke. In the spring, I teach compilers, which is my favorite course to teach. That's where I get the awesomest of the upper level undergrads, some PhD students, the most ambitious of the master's students. They go build a compiler. I feel like that's like my most fun class. The kids are like much more interactive and joking in the classroom. It's like my programming course is like 35 per section per instructor, but previously we've had 2 instructors in the room at a time. My compilers class is like 20 students total. And then I teach our grad software engineering course, which is the follow-on to the programming course. That's about 45 students in a section. I have also taught our server software course. I have taught our undergrad senior design in software engineering. I have taught our like grad fundamentals of computer organization course. I've done a lot of independent studies, which is something that nobody else here has mentioned, but I assume we all kind of do that as we want. Teaching assignments, I would say, are mostly done as stable until disrupted.
Mhm.
Meaning like unless something comes along and like knocks one of these courses out of my rotation, that's what I'm going to teach. And so like, you know, if there's some change, which could be precipitated by me, like if I were to go say, I am tired of software engineering, please swap. Hey, will you guys swap systems programming for software engineering? Like we could make that happen. But generally, we try to stay with a pretty stable rotation because, as you know, if you watched my intro video, new preps are a lot of work.
Thank you so much, Drew. And Thomas, thank you for joining us. So I'll just recap what we're looking for in the introductions. Could you tell us a little bit about your institution, your job title, and what responsibilities that entails? Do you have a PhD, and is that required to teach at your institution? And just to catch you up, could you say a few words about how teaching assignments are made in your department?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So my name is Thomas Reicherser. I'm a professor at the University of West Florida. I'm the department chair at West Florida. We're a small regional comprehensive university in the panhandle of Florida. We have in our program, we have about 500 students in computer science, undergraduate and graduate. And we have a program called software development, which is not so theoretical. It's more focused on software engineering, software development. So those are our three programs. And we also support cybersecurity students and students at the graduate level in the data science program. So overall, I would say around 800 to 900 students that we have to support. We have about 8 faculty members in the department. 50% are instructors. So we value our instructors highly. They make a huge contribution to our department. Let me see. So we have no PhD program, but and our instructors are not required to have a terminal degree. We have almost all of them do have terminal degrees, but one doesn't, and so it just restricts them to what they can teach. So at the undergraduate level, they can teach all courses, but at the graduate level, it's a little bit more limited. Yeah, so so I teach myself still a course, one course per semester in operating systems and networks, and one in AI. In the spring semester, I get to teach the AI course, but I also mentor students on graduate projects and on thesis. So yeah, that should wrap it up. I think.
I was wondering if you could say a little bit about how, since you're department chair, how are teaching assignments made in your department, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
and what's the normal teaching load?
Yeah, so our teaching load is 4 so 4 courses for instructors in fall and spring. They don't have a research obligation. They can get involved in research, and we encourage that, and we support that. And so to lower the workload for our instructors, what I'm doing is usually assign them like 2 prep courses. So one course, the multiple sections of one course, ideally. And so that helps the instructors, and I also provide TA support. Yeah, so and in the summer, instructors can teach in the summer. We always have opportunities for instructors to teach in the summer. At our institution, like many other institutions in the United States, you have now promotion opportunities for instructors. They're hired as lecturer and become eventually senior lecturers. So, and there are guidelines for how you become a senior lecturer. They have to put in a dossier and describe the impact in teaching. Yeah, so I hope this answered the question, Janet.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. Since you brought up summers, Let me ask one more question, and then we'll turn to questions from the audience. The question I'd like to ask of the other panelists is, what are your summers like, and how's that different from your time when classes are in session? Drew wants to start.
Yeah, I'll start with so the first thing is summer is the time to get everything done. So for me, like I have a big to-do list of like get these materials updated for this class, and I also have a variety of other projects, many of which are paying the summer salary. So like our Center for Computational Thinking might give me some money to do a project for them, or my service obligations might pay some summer salary. Those kind of get spread across the year more, but they may have big components. Like I'm doing a bunch of stuff to get our game dev masters launched this summer because that's part of my service obligations right now. So there's a lot of just getting stuff done for me, but it's also still a much lighter pace than the year, like during the academic year. What do things look like during the academic year? Busy, busy. Right, like teaching 2 courses involves helping a lot of students. There's a lot of service going on. There's a lot of just random stuff that happens. Like when people are like, Drew, where's all your time go? I'm like, well, this week it went to like, you know, this thing came up and I had to put out this fire and somebody was trying to make a bad decision and I had to go tell them not to, and then like fight with people and email this associate dean and like, you know, blah da da blah, right? And so that's it's like just all over the place what I'm doing beyond just kind of the basic teaching stuff.
Thanks, Drew. Would America or Jeffrey like to jump in? America will jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in next. What is summer like as compared to the academic year? That's such a great question. Okay. My summers are definitely lighter in the sense that I'm not teaching classes. And so teaching, prep, grading, interacting with students, all of that is not happening. I do most of my research during the summer. As Jeffrey said as well, like my natural language processing class, when I teach it, I teach it in conjunction with my research. So I guess in that sense, some research happens during the school year with students, but yeah, research happens during the summer. Also, I have 1,000 ideas for every class I teach, every class I want to teach. I just have so many ideas. So the summer is the time to do all of my ideas that have built up. So this summer I started my own tech company. I have my own LLC that I just registered with the state, and I'm taking on interns to work on a web development project. And let's see, other things I do during the summer. So I also, for example, I'm on a grant and we're trying to start a center for AI and ethics. And so part of that grant is a bunch of work done in the summer, which will be kind of launching different initiatives and doing outreach to the community. So basically the summer is that time where every fun idea that you had that seemed great when you had it actually gets done. And then you're like, wow, why did I commit to all of this? But it is a lighter like flow. So I try not to work more than 20 hours a week in my summer. Even that I think honestly is too much. Like some of those hours aren't even paid. So I'm like, why am I doing this? So this will be the first summer in my career where I'm going to intentionally not work for part of it, and see how that goes. So it is a lighter kind of rhythm, but as someone who does have a lot of ideas, I do end up doing quite a bit during the summer because I have so many ideas that I want to do. So yeah.
Thanks, America. I think Jeffrey, you had something to say as well.
I was gonna say, I feel like summer is always an illusion. It just disappears. Like I'm already kind of like panicking that summer's almost over right now, and we haven't even finished finals week yet. Sorry. Yeah. So the typical school year, so I don't think I mentioned my teaching load. I typically teach we call it a 2-2 load, but usually it's by the number of hundreds of students we teach. So like one load is 200 students. I teach 400 students a semester. Okay, so that takes up a lot of time. So that, I mean, that really is like half, like between office hours, grading, like writing assignments, meeting with students, I do a lot of office hours actually. Just because of the number of students, I just really want to make sure that they have access to an instructor. And then a mixture of research and service. So one thing which I think maybe is worth mentioning is that what your typical day looks like will start to change as you get deeper into your career. It's not uncommon that when you're a junior professor, like it is all teaching and maybe a teensy bit of service and then a little bit of like other stuff. As you get a little bit further on, you start taking on bigger and more time intensive service opportunities. And so it's not uncommon now that I get like, oh, hey, we want you to serve on this committee. And now this one could be like, and like just getting lots of different requests for my time. And so I'm in a lot more meetings. Like I feel like my typical week looks like I is scheduled out except for maybe like 5 hours a week where I actually have some flexibility to choose what I'm doing like during the normal work hours. And then if I need to work extra at night, I might do that. I try to not work more than 50 hours a week when I can, but that's not always, I'm not always able to keep it to that. I like it just becomes less effective. Like my time is not well spent if I'm working more than that. I know myself. Summers, on the other hand, it's as other people have said, it's less deadline driven. There's a lot less meetings. Very few committees meet over the summer, and so it's a lot less unstructured time, which is both a blessing and a curse. And like when you're like, I just have to get this done because this is 1 hour this week I can get it done, you just get it done. Or it's like, oh, I have extra time. I can like, I feel like I don't use my time as well as I would like every summer. But it is a little more focused on research, a little bit. I do some course prep work over the summer just so my semesters are not as crazy. Um, and uh, and then there's a lot of conference travel, a lot of other like, and then I do try to take like 3-ish weeks off every summer just to spend time with family and actually take a break.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thomas, do you have anything to add or are you good?
Yeah, I think everybody covered it pretty well. I would say summer is definitely a time to also recharge batteries because fall and spring, everybody is super, super busy. So it could be a good time to create curriculum. I see some questions related to that. So you build your curriculum during the summertime so that you're ready for the fall and spring semesters.
Thank you, Thomas. So at this point, I see we built up some questions from the audience. So if you think of more questions, go ahead and type them in the Q&A. And I'll ask either Kelly or Borja to jump in here and ask a question from the audience.
So yeah, we have a lot of really great questions. So thank you all for submitting such great questions. And right now, the most upvoted one, I think, is a really interesting one that I think our panelists are probably going to have some good insights on, which is, what are the thinking about pursuing a teaching career? Like you can go to a large public university, you can go to a small liberal arts school, et cetera. So the question is about, the pros and cons of each, and is it just about the class size, or are there more sort of like differences between teaching in one type of institution versus another?
Great question. Drew wants to jump in.
So, as someone who teaches at a private institution, I will say that I before this I was in industry for a couple of years. One of the things that shocked me was how little approval I need to get stuff done. And I think that at public schools, there's a lot more like approval, bureaucracy, rigidity to stuff. And so like, for example, when I was fairly new in my career, I wanted to buy $1,000 of Legos for this lab I wanted to do in my class. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna think I'm just like buying Legos to play with. Like, and I was like, who needs to approve this? What do I need to do? And they were like, you just do it. Like, like you just write on the form, this is for my class, and like, cool, like whatever. Whereas like I know at least in industry, like it's like, oh, you want business cards? Like that's a purchase thing that has to go through 3 layers of management approval. And my understanding, I haven't been at a public school, is that those are much more the same way, where it's like, oh, you want to purchase this thing, like it's unusual, go through this. Alcohol is a lot easier for us to purchase. I know that for sure. Like when we have our visiting PhD students come in and it's like, hey, the bar tab was $15,000 this year. It's whatever. So there's a lot more flexibility, a lot less rules, which can be nice when you want to do unusual. Like I've described kind of like the drinking and whatever. Not just that, like that. I don't get to go to the bar party, but like the analog of that is like you want to go do like some unusual thing. You don't have like the state legislature's minions going, but that's not how we taught it in 1723. And so like it's like you want to do a thing, cool, like try it out.
Okay, thank you, Drew. I saw Thomas nodding along to a lot of that. Do you have anything more to add, Thomas, or are you just agreeing?
Yeah, no, I agree with the issue of rigidity with public schools. I would say that one of the issues, especially for our schools in Florida, is performance-based funding. So we have to meet certain criteria by our board of governors that guide the universities that we have to comply with. And so there's certainly some things that we have to support as an instructor, as a department and institution. We have to make sure that we are on track. And so that requires some commitments from the faculty, including instructors. But I would say also, it depends on the department and department chair, how much flexibility they have. We have good funding from private donors, so I can always give someone some additional funding to make the high impact practices, introduce high impact practices into the classroom. So we are very supportive of that. So I would say definitely private schools have a lot more flexibility, but we're also trying to provide a good environment for people to thrive in as a public institution.
Thanks, Thomas. Jeffrey, America, I wonder if you'd like to talk about maybe small versus large institutions, because it's more than just class size.
Yeah, I can give kind of the perspective, like what are some of the pros of working at a smaller liberal arts institution. So my first 2 years teaching, I was teaching at Pomona College in Southern California, which is also a small liberal arts, and University of Puget Sound is also as well. So I know that side well. I think the biggest the biggest pro is obviously the size, and that shows up in different ways. So you have smaller class sizes, which means you get to know your students really well, right? Like we just had graduation and we had a celebration for our seniors, and I get to meet all their parents and have long conversations with them. And, we have 20 to 30 majors. So you get to know them really, really well, so that at the end of their 4 years, I actually feel really sad. I came home, I just felt so sad. I was like, my students are graduating. And so you have a lot of personal connection with your students. You get to know them really well. You get to be a part of their life. I have some of my students babysit for me. Okay. I mean, that's how well you get to know them. In terms of my department as well, since it's small, we kind of live life together. So, we see each other obviously at work, but we also spend time outside of work together. And when we have to put a report together or determine the teaching schedule, it really feels very collegial and we enjoy working together. And it's kind of like sitting down with your friends and saying, okay, who's going to teach what and who's going to do what? So it's a really nice, it's probably one of the things I love the most about my job. Now it extends beyond the department as well. Like as a university, we're really small. We've, got maybe 200 faculty, actually less than 200 faculty. And after a while, you've been on committees with a bunch of other professors from different departments. So what that means is you really know a lot of the faculty on campus, and everywhere you go, you see your friends, right? And I've really enjoyed the faculty from other departments. We have a faculty club. So on Fridays, we, hang out and have some wine. Honestly, we complain a lot, but it's really fun, right? And you get to see your friends from all over campus, from philosophy and psychology. And so the size is really nice. It's almost like an American sitcom television show where it's just this little world unto itself, right? And we all know each other and we live life together, and it's great. I would also agree in terms of really good flexibility and lack of oversight, frankly. Like, I don't really have a boss and it feels great. And, you know, you're kind of in your office, and in my office, I am the queen, and I reign, and I make my decisions, and I spend my funds, and there's very little oversight in terms of the day-to-day operations of what happens. So I would say the biggest con to working at a liberal arts institution is that you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to broaden your teaching. You can't just focus on your research area and say, I only teach natural language processing, because a strong computer science major requires that your students see a wide variety of courses. And if you only have, you know, 4 to 8 people teaching those courses, then everyone has to pitch in. So I have definitely broadened my skill set since becoming a faculty member, right? I started out natural language processing, AI, that's very familiar and comfortable to me. I teach intro to computer science every single semester. I've taught the second course, data structures. And then 3 or 4 years ago, we realized we really need someone who can cover software engineering. And we had been having visitors teach it, and it was not going well. And so me and another professor, we got some funding from our university to just during the summer, just teach ourselves web development and software engineering, right? And so I'm in my 4th year of teaching that now. So you really have to be a jack of all trades, and you're going to pick up other areas that, you know, are not your research and not familiar. Now that's also a pro though, right? Because it's so interesting, and it, like, I started my own software development company this summer, right? I did that because this is my 4th year teaching, you know, software engineering and web development. I love it. You know, I love building projects with my students. I have some of my own ideas, right? I would never have been able to go down this path if I didn't have to stretch myself. So I would say the con is you are going to have to pick up other courses and areas of expertise outside of your research. However, that also is a pro, because, you know, it expands what you can do. Also, I guess because my research area is artificial intelligence, I often am looking to apply my research to some application. And so by expanding, it kind of just gives me other areas where I can apply my research. So the pro is the size, whether that's your students, your colleagues in your department, or across departments. And then I would say the biggest con that I can think of right now, if I think of anything else, I'll jump in, but would be you do have to pick up other areas of expertise. Yeah.
Thank you, America. Jeffrey, I'm curious how you see the pros of being at a large, very large institution.
Yeah. So I might actually incidentally answer a couple other questions on the Q&A about like how are EdDs perceived, because my background is actually in education research. I non-jokingly call myself an educational psychologist who happened to find themselves in a computer science department. So like my research is like in how people learn. That's what I care about. That was my doctoral training. That's what my area of expertise is. I have taken exactly 0 computer science classes. Which gets into my pro. What's the pro of being at a large institution? The size. I can be extremely specialized, and that's okay. I would not have survived or done okay at a smaller institution because I don't have any depth or breadth in computer science. The first course I taught is the computer architecture course. I was literally sitting in on my co-teacher's lectures, making sure I knew the content before I got up and gave the next lecture the next hour, because I still didn't know the content. Like I was literally learning half the class on the fly, just staying like 2 days ahead of my students, and just glad that I have a little bit more experience than they do, so I could stay 2 days ahead of them. And that's like and so now I get to teach that same course over and over again because it is the one class I do know now. And that was something I could never do at another institution, like at a small institution, because I don't get to specialize that way. And so I get to play to my strength of being kind of a different bird than everyone else. And I get to focus on doing the education research that I like to do. I get to focus on the courses that I'm able to teach, and be able to push the boundaries of what our department is doing. And so when I joined the department, we did not do education research. And we now have hired a couple tenure track faculty who do education research as well. They keep asking when I want to switch, and I'm like, I'm good, thanks. I like my job a lot. So the size really, what's nice about being a specialist is I get to really think hard about how do I optimize this one course. I get like it's really fun to me to really think about like I want to make this as good as possible of a course as I can. And I think when you're doing multiple different preps, you kind of like just for like two of my first two PhD students that I graduated are both at small institutions. And it's like they're like, I everything is just good enough with their teaching. And it's because you have to generalize, because you have to be able to divide your time between different things. So you don't get to focus. And so I've made a lot of investments and into the way I design my course that I don't like, so that my course like runs really smoothly. And so now, like, I really do get to spend a lot of time with students. Like, I don't spend much time on grading or course prep anymore because my course just runs itself. And I just get to spend time with students. I don't get to know students as well as America does. I've not yet teared up at a student's graduation from undergrad. But I do actually get to know my students decently well. It took a little time to get there, but because of the stability and the specialization, it really did help. So the other kind of pluses of being at a large institution is usually there's just, if you need something, it's there at your fingertips. Because like, I mean, if I need an expert on any topic, I'm like, either walk down the hall or walk down the street, and I can find someone who's the world expert on something. And that's just having that really rich intellectual community. Like I don't know them, they're not all my friends the way America's are, but they're there. So I have a lot more like I have a lot of good colleagues, not as many friends as America is maybe the way I would say it, which I'm, as an introvert, I'm kind of okay with. I don't need a lot of friends.
Thank you, everyone. I'm wondering if we could, from Borja or Kelly, have one more question from the audience, and then I think we'll transition into a networking session. So Borja, Kelly, is there one more question that's standing out?
I think there's like several questions that all drive at a similar point, which is people are asking, what was your path? Like how did you end up in a teaching track career? Did you go into your PhD like knowing like, yes, this is what I'm going to do? Did it sort of like change over the course of your PhD, or how did you end up, or maybe you didn't follow that sort of more traditional academic path? Like how did you end up in a teaching track career, and how did you end up choosing a teaching track career, which I'm sure all of our panelists are going to have insights on.
Thank you, Borja. Who'd like to start?
Sure, I'm happy
Sure,
to.
thank you, Drew.
So when I was an undergrad, I thought I just wanted to be a software engineer. And then I started TAing CS2 at Georgia Tech and was like, wow, I really like teaching. What should I do about teaching? And one of the reasons why I'm so invested in doing these kind of panels and stuff is basically everyone told me like, well, you have two choices. You either go tenure track where it's research and like, yes, you can teach, but like really that's not that important. Do research. Or you can like go be an adjunct and like starve to death. And that was not quite, but like so adjuncts, side note, like adjuncts, there's a very broad spectrum of how they get paid and how they're treated across different schools. That's a whole different topic. But like, and so I was like, cool, I guess I'm going to do research so I can teach. And so I went, did my PhD. And if you're on the tenure track job market and you're like, I really like teaching, let's talk. Oh, can we talk about teaching? That's not the best interview strategy. I also was graduating in 2010, which was right at the tail end of the 2008 financial crisis. So there were some jobs, but not that many. And I ended up basically going to IBM to work in industry for a few years because I had an offer that was going to expire before my other interviews, and it was like, oh my gosh, I have to take this. But fortunately, that group was very amenable to teaching, so I taught a couple courses at Duke as an adjunct, and then they said, and while I was doing this, I interfaced with someone who was a professor of the practice. I was like, what is this thing? And they were like, well, I'm a teaching faculty. I was like, there's a like, where did this thing come from? How did I not know about this? And so then my department was looking for someone to design and teach their master's program. And I was like, I get a blank slate to design the curriculum of like how to teach like sign me up. Yes, that is me. And so that actually worked out really well.
Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, I can jump in next. So for me, it was similar. I taught at the undergraduate as an undergraduate student. I taught classes. I was a TA, a lab. I taught labs, and it was a very enriching experience. I really enjoyed helping the students, advancing their knowledge in the field, and it was just a very good interaction between the students and myself, and I felt like I made an impact and a difference in their lives, and that was the same happened when I came. Actually, I came as an exchange student from Germany to UWF. And I was teaching a class in C++ programming, and I thought it was really a nice experience with the students. There's a lot of work involved, and you realize early on, oh, there's so much that I have to do to become a really good teacher. But the students are really at that time and still to this day are grateful, and you have just you feel like at the end of the day you made a difference in people's lives, and this interaction between faculty and student continues beyond the classroom, and I felt like, okay, this is what I wanted to do with my life. So, and that's why I continue with a PhD and then eventually became professor.
Thank you, Thomas. America was about to jump in too.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not know that I was going to be a professor. So I in undergraduate did math. I stumbled into computer science completely randomly, frankly. Ended up enjoying it and majored in math and computer science. And then when I graduated, I actually taught at a middle school and high school for a year, and it was so horrific of an experience. And I was just like, I will never do this again. Now, having said that, during that year, there were like 3 days where my students listened and asked questions and wanted to learn. And those 3 days were addictive. They were just amazing. It feels so amazing when you see people learning and you see ideas clicking. So although the year itself was not a good year, there were a few days in there that I thought, wow, if every day was like these days, I would teach the rest of my life. That was, most days were not like that. So anyway, so after that 1 year, I actually decided to go back and get my PhD, really just because I felt like I didn't have enough experience and didn't have enough knowledge to do what I wanted to do, which was basically anything but teaching at the middle and high school level. And I knew I was good at school, and a master's costs money, so I didn't have any life plans. I mean, I didn't have very deep reasons for getting a PhD, frankly. So anyways, during my PhD, I actually thought I was just going to work. I had interned at a pretty big company. It was a great internship. They enjoyed me. I enjoyed them. When I graduated, I fully expected to just work for them. But I was living about 5 minutes away from Pomona College, and I knew the professors there. And they just so happened that they were looking for a visiting assistant professor when I was graduating. And I remember I was in an elevator, and one of the professors was like, "Hey, we're hiring." In my head, I was like, I'm not going to teach. I think at the time I thought, I'll teach when I'm old. Once I've lived life, then I'll go back and teach. But yeah, I realized at some point, hey, Pomona College is like literally 5 minutes from me, whereas this other company was an hour and a half drive, so 3 hours a day just commuting. This was in Southern California. So I decided actually to just give it a try and to teach. And I think, teaching at the college level is so much different than teaching at the middle school and high school level. You do have students who are interested in learning, and they're eager and they want to do fun things. And so for me, I incidentally fell into computer science. I kind of haphazardly got my PhD, and then I coincidentally, got a job teaching. But I just ended up absolutely loving it. And I would say this is something I tell people about teaching which is it challenges every aspect of me. And I think that's one of the things that I fell in love with. It challenges my organizational side. It challenges my creativity, and it gives me all of these open venues to be as creative as I want and literally just do crazy creative things. And people are like, yeah, sure, do it, you know. It challenges me in terms of my use of authority. As a professor, you're an authority figure, and it's not often that you have to exercise that in society, but even that of seeing myself as an authority and being an authority, it challenges me in terms of putting processes in place. It challenges me in terms of thinking about how do people think, and thinking about, how can I best communicate to my students, and articulating clearly. Like, there's not a part of me as a human that is not challenged by this job, and it's never boring. It's never repetitive. So I think I kind of stumbled into teaching, but I found that I absolutely loved it, and I'm really glad that I took this path. Yeah.
Thank you so much, America. Jeffrey, I hate to cut you off, but we're hitting the 1 hour mark, and you already mentioned some things about your career path. I think at this point we're maybe ready for a transition. Kaylee, we have a poll for the participants to just collect some brief demographic and evaluative information. Let's give folks a couple minutes to do that. And then we're going to be transitioning into these breakout rooms. And there's going to be a new Zoom link for those who'd like to join a breakout room and do some networking and ask some additional questions of the panelists or each other.